feel like I need the wordless or the voiceless countdown and a point. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Windshield Time, the podcast where we help you use your windshield time to turn learning into earning. Windshield Time is brought to you by Service Excellence. I am your host, Chris Elmore, and I am joined by the ever-present, inimitable,
lingering,
inimitable,
inimitable
James Walker Jr., also known as J-Dub. Today, in this episode of the podcast, we are going to be talking about the multiple bids or the second opinion objections. So, stay with me. That was better.
That's better.
You didn't like hang in there.
Hang in there.
You didn't like hang in there before.
Us. Yeah.
So one of the things we were talking about before we got on is Mover and Gonky.
Mover and Gonky. Mover ruins movies. I love that.
If
channel.
you have never
Gonky's
seen
my
this guy,
boy. I like Mover, but Gonky's my boy, dude.
If you've never seen that, you got to watch it. You got to check those videos out. There's like 8 videos, maybe 15, 20 minutes each.
Oh, I thought it'd be more than that.
No, just
with Gonky.
Just on Top Gun Maverick.
Oh, yeah, just on Top Gun Maverick. But they do a lot of other movies. They do like Iron Eagle.
Oh, yeah. I haven't seen any of the other ones. I love the ones
they're
on
great.
Top Gun Maverick. But basically, these two guys, Mover and Gonky, that was their call signs. They were both naval aviators, and I think both of them flew in the Air Force.
Mover was Air Force. I don't think that Gonky was.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
They were both fighter pilots, and they've flown several different aircraft. And Mover is the guy who has the channel, and Gonky is his
sidekick. You're Mover, I'm Gonky.
Just like James. James is my sidekick. But anyway, those guys
better looking.
They talk
more
about
relatable.
More skilled. They talk about movies and how the different scenes with dogfights and fighter jets and all that kind of stuff are not right.
Yeah,
what's wrong with it?
Like Behind Enemy Lines. Did you see that one with Owen Wilson?
No, I've got to see that one.
Oh, it's great, man. They're like,
got to see
this is absurd.
I love.
There's no way a rocket would do that. So it's very insightful. I mean, it's very insightful.
And they get into the typical expert nerd out conversations like, oh, the BDC was not even set for land.
You never RUF this on a GO7. And you're like, okay, I got exactly what he said there.
Yeah, that's a stick from an A-10 Warthog.
Which, by the way, the mother of all planes. A-10 Warthogs are my favorites.
What's
they
the
have
plane
a 30 caliber machine gun that's about 1/3 the length of the plane. It's like basically they put a plane around a gun. It's one of the coolest airplanes out there. I'm sorry, I'm geeking out here.
Thank you for telling me that.
Yeah,
what's the plane that they call Fat Amy? Is that the F-35?
The Fat Amy, yes.
The F-35, they call it Fat Amy.
Fat Amy.
But like they're watching it, and at the end where the plane is coming on their nose, they're going in the direction of the aircraft carrier, right? They're flying back to the aircraft
right.
And the enemy plane, they're like, where is he? Where is he? He's on our nose. And they're like, they stop it, and they're like,
no.
Where was the boat?
Right, yeah.
He flew to the boat, and he's flying back at them.
Right, exactly.
And it's just the way they were talking about that whole mission. Now at one point, they're talking about the mission where they got to blow up the thing, and he stops and he goes, Star Wars, blow up the Death Star. But anyway, it's cool. You should check it out. Mover and Gonky. Mover ruins movies.
There you go.
So
you think they'll plug us on their next podcast?
They probably won't. No.
You think Gonky would call himself J-Dub? That'd be cool.
Well, we could have a tie-in, and we could call it J-Dub Ruins Podcast. We got the spit take. Alex, did you get that? Because we're leaving that in. We're not doing anything with that. We've got to have that. Alex, if you do not send me slow-mo of that, I will be mad. Because that was awesome. We are not going to cut that. Collect yourself. See, that's why this podcast is great, because we're not scripted. We're not. I had no idea James was going to suck coffee down his lungs and spit it back out his nose. Because I know there was coffee airborne in that. Are you okay?
I'm there.
Okay. You verklempt?
Yeah. Let's keep it going. J-Dub Ruins podcasts.
Oh, that was awesome. That was podcast magic, people. James Walker, ladies and gentlemen. Yay. All right, let's get back to it. Anyway, check those guys out. That's funny. We're going to jump into it because we're going to talk about the multiple bids, which if you're going in as a technician selling technical work, you're probably not going to get the multiple bids objection unless it's a bigger ticket item.
Right.
You're probably going to get the second opinion first.
Sure.
Because the customer doesn't necessarily see you as a, in air quotes, salesperson. So they're thinking, well, I need a second opinion.
Right.
And there's lots of ways for that.
Well, and let's talk too real fast about the second opinion and the multiple bids are a relatively confrontational objection. As
there could be declarations.
Declarations, right? As
They're
opposed
declarative.
to more passive, I need to think about it or whatever.
Or I can't afford it.
I'm not sure, right? So I think that these are more prone to certain personality types even. Like I'm not as prone to seeing a high S directly tell you.
Sorry. I was just spitting your coffee, but okay.
Good.
A high S.
A high S are probably going to say, I need to talk to my spouse or I need to think about it or whatever. A high C is probably much more heavily on the multiple bids or even has other people lined up. And a high D is like, no, I'm getting a second opinion. There's no way that I'm going to take first blush. Just be thoughtful going in. If you got Ds or Cs, those are probably more prone towards this being natural to them.
And that's one of the things we haven't really talked about, which will be a future podcast, is how disc profile plays into objection handling and what objections might come up. It's all speculation, but I think it's worth a speculative trip down that road to talk about it. But yeah, you're right. If we think about the 5 most common objections, the spouse, think about it, expensive, afford it, and multiple bids or second opinion. Of these objections, talk to my spouse is declarative, sacred. It's still a separation objection. Think about it. It's a declaration and it's a separation objection, but it's not sacred. Right. And it's very nebulous, as we discussed. Expensive, declaration. Can't afford it. That is less of a declaration and more of a
invitation. I don't know.
Well, vulnerability is there, which implies they might need some help.
Right.
And so it's less of a declaration and more of maybe I need to know more. Or I need to know how can I even. It's probably I want to do it, but I just can't. I don't have the money for it. Because I don't think someone would give you that objection if they hadn't most of the time decided they were going to. They know they need it, right? Yeah. And it's the right thing to do. Multiple bids and second opinion. That one can be kind of like talk to my spouse, in that you could think talk to my spouse sometimes could be they're going to talk to their spouse, which is a process objection. So second opinion, multiple bid. I'm getting a second opinion, or I want a second opinion, or I need to get 3 bids. Those are more, they could be process objections too. So if we think about it, we can break them down like that.
Sure.
And so we have to, just like we do every objection, we have to break down what people might be thinking when they do it. And of course, it can go all over the place. Are you still having?
Yeah, I'm fighting a little bit of allergies, but I'm good.
Or running a full cup of coffee through your nose?
Yeah, it's definitely, that was an enema for my nostrils, is all I got to say.
That is, wow.
It's provocative.
No, I was going to say it's gross.
Well, yeah, but that's Will Ferrell. So that was my tag for a Will Ferrell movie.
Oh, okay.
So we were talking about
we were saying
second opinion.
Okay, so now we have to think about what would be the reasons, because I think you have to approach objections when you're talking through them and when you're working them out for yourself. You have to approach objections with that literal first, and is there more things that literally they're not going to do? Like we talk about, I'm going to think about it. Are they literally going to sit and ponder the decision? It's probable. It's possible, but probably not as probable. But when we think of 3 bids and second opinion, that could be a stalling tactic. It could be, well, I want a better price. It could be, I'm a super high C. I have a spreadsheet. This is what I have to do. Process. So we need to think literal and think, what could they possibly be doing by that?
So I think I'm going to differentiate between, they're very similar. Service more along the lines of second opinion, replacement along the lines of multiple bids. But for the second opinion, I think that we often attribute it to, well, we did perfect in our process. We know exactly what we're talking about. And it's probably just a money where they want to see if the money's any different. I would hesitate to say that because there might have been something that you've done to shortchange the process in that they don't actually trust your diagnosis.
Yeah, well, that's what it's going to go to. Trust and value. Those are the two big things in this.
And I think that a lot of times second opinion might not be about, okay, maybe that's what these things cost. I don't know if you're trying to upsell me a motor when all I need is a capacitor.
Right. So it might be a price comparison thing. It could be defensive.
Even a diagnostic comparison. Are you looking at the same thing, or can I trust you that you're not trying to, one of those, wolves in sheep's clothing? So be thoughtful, because we as service professionals try to address the money issue typically if we're going to push back on this. And it might actually be not about money at all. Yeah. It might be about the process. You actually undermined that value because they don't trust what you said.
I'm sorry, I keep cracking up about that.
It was good.
But no. Good. So when you were talking about that, I was thinking about my dad. And I mentioned on a previous podcast how he had the gas company guy came out and thought he had a gas leak. So he paid a plumber to come. Well, he hadn't paid him yet, but he had a plumber come out and spent a couple hours crawling up under the house and soap bubble and everything to see where the leaks were. Didn't find any leaks. Well, we come to find out that the tech who came out from the gas company to do the maintenance on the meter, test the gas lines from the meter standpoint, did it wrong. He forgot to turn a valve off at the gas fireplace. So there was a bleed by because of the pilot. So he assumed it was a leak, because why would he not do his full process every time, right? Well, he forgot to do that. So the next guy, okay, the plumber comes out, no leak. They call the gas company back out. The gas company comes back out, and they're like, yeah, there's no leaks. And probably what happened was the guy forgot to turn off this valve at the fireplace, which is exactly what happened. Well, think of my dad. If my dad wasn't an insider who thinks he knows stuff, I mean, he does. But think about if it was just a regular customer that didn't have any history or any insider information. That would probably make him wary of the next technician that came in the house, at least on an unconscious level, and certainly the next gas person that came. There would be a question there. Did you turn off all the valves everywhere? Right. Because last time this is what happened. And so I think also history informs a lot of objections. For sure. And I think more so in these type process objections, because maybe they had a bad diagnosis, spent a lot of money before, and they didn't need to, in the case of my dad. Maybe they took the first bid on something before and found out they could get it $2,000 less, or they could get a better product for the same amount of money, but they didn't have that option because they went with the first one we came up with. And I think that's the inherent fear. Yeah. Especially of big ticket items, when you're going to get multiple bids. Especially with big ticket items, the fear is you're going to pay too much for it. Right. Because you're uninformed. Now, what I think has happened to us in a way that technology has actually helped and not hurt, you can debate whether the hurts of it are more so than the help. Counterbalanced, right. But now what they can do is a customer, before you come out and look at their thing, running that outlet out to the patio for their new Traeger grill, or running that dedicated circuit for their Peloton, whatever, they can look it up. How much does it cost to do this? And you can find any number of electrical contractors that have stuff on their websites, the lead aggregator people, the home improvement advocates. All these people are going to have different opinions and dollar amounts for that repair or that thing. Like right now, if you said, and I'll save you, I won't Joe Rogan it because Alex can't look this up for us. But if I were to say, how much is electrical panel replacement? I would Google that, and I would have contractors that would put it in the higher end of a range And then I would have lead aggregation sites that would put it probably in the middle of the range. And then I would have like Reddit and other places where homeowners post. I paid my brother-in-law X amount to do it. And so that would set the bottom end of the range. And the problem is the customer is going to stick to the bottom end of that range. Mm-hmm. So that's where it hurts us. But at least in the olden days, they couldn't go anywhere else. They had to talk to somebody else to get a comparative price.
Right.
Or a comparative product. They had to talk to somebody, a neighbor, a family member, a friend, whatever. They had to do that. Maybe they got lucky and there was something on TV about it or whatever. But now they can get that comparative price a lot easier. And unfortunately, it drives the bottom limit of pricing
sure, but
down.
You're saying the positive side is they now have a higher limit, an upper limit that is present where it might not have been before.
And they can do some of their research before, because back in the day, getting 3 bids was because that's the only way you could get research.
Right.
Unless you went to the library
right.
and got out the old card catalog and you knew your Dewey Decimal System. Oh, right. Yeah. Dewey Decimal, right? Here,
Ohm's Law.
To Mr. Dewey.
Here.
Oh, I dripped. Felt bad for you, James.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So when we do get, let's talk first about second opinion. To me, second opinion is rooted in some sort of disbelief.
Mm-hmm.
You said it earlier, unmet expectation. I think that qualifies in the same category. It's unbelief. They don't believe that this is what they need. They don't believe that that's the price for it. They don't believe you can do the work. They don't believe your company is the right company. I think all this unbelief is what fuels a second opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are some people, and again, we have to remember, this could just be their process. They have to go through this process. Now, what some companies have done, good or bad, they'll have a situation where if a customer wants a second opinion, the technician is to call and they get the air quotes field supervisor out there, which is just a selling technician that comes in and basically backs up the opinion of the first tech.
Sure.
That's not inherently bad, especially if your company's the right company, then maybe they don't believe that you can do the work.
Right.
Maybe they don't believe you're experienced enough to do the work, right? So that can happen, and that could be effective. But ultimately, when you get the I want a second opinion objection, how do we handle that? Well, previous listeners of this podcast, the 4 of them that survived what we're going to call nostril gate with the coffee there, you'll know that we've talked about we want to minimize or eliminate objections before they come up. And because any objection can be about trust and value and all that, but especially when someone, as you said, it's more of a challenge, it's a declaration.
Yeah.
I'm going to get other bids, or I need a second opinion. That can be taken by the technician as kind of a personal challenge.
Sure.
And that's the wrong way to go. That's the wrong way to receive it. But you follow your process, you build your value, you build trust in you, you build your credibility, and that's why credibility is so important. And we've talked about it in the psychology of the service call. And you go to a doctor, you go to a medical building. It says medical building somewhere on it, or medical plaza, or this doctor, or this medical practice that's descriptive about what they do. You go into some receiving area and you present your ID and your insurance card and you pay, and then you go to a waiting room, and the whole time you're doing it, there's medical stuff going on around you, whether it's posters on the wall or whatever. You go into the waiting room and there's always a TV talking about diabetes, heart disease, blood pressure, all that stuff. And there's all these like Prevention Magazine or Aging Magazine, or all this kind of stuff around, right? And there's PSA posters on the wall. You go in the back. Well, then you get into the inner sanctum, and what is it? You see medical equipment. You see eye charts. You see posters. You get in the little room, and there's the table. Why do they call it a table?
I don't know.
You ever wonder that?
No.
Because it's more like a beefed up recliner.
Yeah.
If you think about it, with paper on it.
Yeah.
So anyway, but you see that, and doctor.
Sure.
There's no credibility issues. You never ask your doctor, hey, do you really know what you're doing? Where did you go to school? How long have you been doing this? You don't, because the inferred thing is doctors go to school a long time, and typically
by virtue of your setting, you are who you say you are.
You're who you say you are, and you obviously are good at it enough that somebody lets you be a doctor. Okay? Well, with you, as an in-home sales or service professional, you pull up to the house in a vehicle that's branded. And in most states, at least in Texas for sure, you have to have your license number on it. And you say on the side what you do: electrical services, plumbing, drain cleaning, HVAC, whatever. And so the same people who let doctors be doctors, must obviously let you be a plumber, because you're there at their house when they called a plumber. So that's as far as your credibility goes. Now, what we don't hear about, we do hear about doctors doing the wrong things, but those are outliers when it comes to a medical professional. When you think of a doctor, you don't think of a doctor cheating you. But when you think of a contractor, one of the first things you think of is someone cheating you. So that credibility, you have to beef up the credibility about you. And if you're walking into a house, the first point of credibility is, well, you pull up in a nice truck first. Credibility can be judged by you walking through the yard instead of up a walkway or the driveway. So don't walk through the yard. You know, it could be judged by, is your shirt untucked? Is it dirty? Are your pants dirty? Are you wearing, not boots? Are you wearing Crocs and shorts? Those kind of things, which, by the way, I have seen.
Sure.
So that all goes to credibility. It also goes to value. I was in a office of a former client, and this is not why he's a former client, but a former client, and I had spent a day with him, and at the end of the day, we were going over his pricing and how much he was charging per hour. And I think it was $425 or something like that. And it's flat rate, so there's factors to consider, but it was $425 an hour. And I'm like, you guys, 425 is going to be hard for you to sell. Well, why? Because we do this, and he calculated with his cost. I mean, he had it nailed to the penny the way it should be done. Well, right at that time, his lead guy came in. Okay, and I hadn't seen any of the techs since I'd been there. His lead guy came. It was about 3:30 in the afternoon. He walks in, and he's wearing this was at the beach, a beach community, and he's wearing a surf shop T-shirt. He's wearing cargo shorts that come down almost below his knees, and he's wearing camouflage Crocs with socks.
Whoa.
But only ankle socks. So
it's choice.
Yeah. He walks through, says, hey, introducing, oh, yeah, blah, blah. He goes out into the warehouse, comes back through. All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow. He goes. And so he picked right back up. And it was just like I set it up. I didn't set it up. It was just like I set up. So the guy looks at me and goes, well, what do you think we're worth? I mean, I said, well, it goes into image and all that. He goes, well, what do we look like we're worth? I said, $100. And it's like a light bulb went off in his head, and he just looked at the door that the guy had walked out 10 minutes before. And it was like, oh, okay. And so then we started talking about it. And the next morning, he had boxes of brand new polo shirts.
Good for him.
And work pants. Well, he already had them.
Interesting.
He just wasn't using them.
Yeah.
And so, but when we're getting into multiple bids and second opinion, you got to be doing everything possible from the beginning to establish trust and value. That's independent of how you're going to treat the customer. Because you're going to treat the customer great and demonstrate a lot of value and gain a lot more trust. But if they can't trust the way you look, they're not going to trust you with anything else. So image goes into it. Setting your credibility, using a credibility statement. Telling, I've been in the business for X amount of years. I got my journeyman's blah, blah, blah. I went to this school and, I've served X amount of customers. Doing that, if you don't do that, no one's doing it for you, because you can't walk past a diploma, right? The customer can't walk past a diploma and all these board certifications like in a doctor's office or a dentist office or an attorney's office or a CPA's office or an insurance salesperson's office. I mean, those people have their credibility built in their environment. You don't, because you might be in a house that hasn't been cleaned in 20 years that has 15 cats. that's not your credibility.
Right.
And if you don't establish it beyond just a truck and just beyond you work for a company that somebody has allowed to be in the plumbing business, then you're selling yourself short big time.
Mm-hmm.
And so credibility is a big piece of these two
For sure.
objections. And that's why we say the best way to handle an objection, minimize, eliminate it before it happens by using your process. So prepare, make sure you look the part. You can lose a sale because you smell. And it doesn't mean you smell bad. You just smell objectionable to the person there. And even if they have 15 cats.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing they probably smell is stale urine. But all of a sudden you come in and you were vaping in your truck and now you smell like something.
For a Service Professionals podcast, I think this is the first time I've ever heard the phrase stale urine as part of our conversation, probably.
As many as we've done?
I know, right?
I mean, we've got to be...
There's got to be a bingo card
I mean, we've
somewhere.
been doing this... I've been doing this since 2019, so...
Yeah.
There's hundreds of these episodes.
For sure.
I'm pretty sure I've never said Margaret Thatcher before.
Right.
So I think you got to understand that those kind of things, they always play into trust and credibility, but those are there to minimize or eliminate these type of objections.
For sure.
Okay. So we've got to do that, your process. Well, if we get an objection, we have to leap, listen, empathize, ask questions, problem solve. We listen to understand, not to respond, because if we're listening to respond, we're probably going to problem solve too early. And then we're going to PLEA, which means we're going to beg for the business or beg for forgiveness, one of those two. So we don't want to do that. So we're going to listen, empathize, and ask a question to see, is this a condition or a smokescreen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in your training of this and your encounters, and ride-alongs with technicians, how are you handling, let's say first, the second opinion?
Second opinion objection. So one of the things is when you're in this is obviously coming up when the money's on the table,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think that you do empathize by saying, again, back to this expectation, say, I realize this is maybe more than you expect. Again, it sounds like I'm getting back to the same questions, but those big questions that we ask about sales, like, do you understand the diagnosis and feel like what we're diagnosing is accurate to
Mm-hmm.
what needs to be done? Do you actually like this scenario? Back to it gets a little bit more into the second opinion and multiple bids, but if you are looking at other bids or you are talking to another person, what's going to be important about what they tell you other than price that's going to make you feel like they're
Mm-hmm.
a good fit?
Yeah.
Right? And so, because I feel like there's this context of what do you feel like is missing from our conversation today that you, by hearing somebody else, would feel more response to acting on?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's where I would get into those questions of processes. Again, you're going to asking second opinion. One for me is I'm asking not just about do they understand the diagnosis and the solutions we're talking about, but two, when.
Mm-hmm.
When is this something you want to get taken care of? The good news is I do have this on my truck. It might be a little bit more than you're expecting it to be. You might be uncertain about the diagnosis, but do you have another, if it's summer and we don't have AC, if it's hot water and you're waiting, if you don't have electricity, do they want to wait 3 or 4 days for the pot? How long did you wait for us to come out here? Are you concerned that if you have to wait 2 or 3 more days for another person to come out and do a second opinion, you're stuck without the solution in that in-between time?
Right.
Right? And again, just this is not where you go next, but I want you guys to think about this. If we're talking about a hot water heater, sorry, there's no such thing.
There's no such thing as a hot
A
water
heater.
That's called a superheater.
That's
You
a
don't want one of
superheater.
those.
You're talking about a water heater, and we're $300 more than somebody else. The duration on that water heater as a solution, 8, 10 years maybe, depending on the maintenance and everything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
$300 over 10 years is $30 a year. Broken down monthly is $2 a month, right? $2.50 a month.
Yeah.
And you haven't even necessarily thought about that. If it's going to be another 3 or 4 days before
Right.
somebody comes out, and then they're going to get a bid and they might be the same price as you.
Mm-hmm.
Some people it's not even worth it to me. $300 sounds like a lot until I break down the actual meaning behind convenience,
Mm-hmm.
the meaning behind value of getting this taken care of, knowing it's guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking to these other contractors, whatever you want to call them, How important is it to you that they are guaranteeing the work they do? How important is it to you that they've been in the trades as long as we have? How
Right.
important is it to you that they have the type of rating in the Better Business Bureau? I would ask all those things
Mm-hmm.
in my context. Depending on when, though, I would definitely isolate the solution itself first and have their idea about whether they agree with the solution and the diagnosis. Because if you don't have the solution, the diagnosis tied down, they're not even talking
Right.
about price at this point.
Well, that's the thing is, we talk about, is an objection a no? And it's not a no. If they say no, it is.
Mhm.
It's a no. But if they say, I'm getting multiple bids or I need a second opinion, that's not a no. And so then, I'm going to warn technicians out there, in-home sales professionals, you understand this, but technicians, I'm going to warn you, I'm going to say the C word, which you don't like because you think it makes you a salesperson. Closing. So the questions you're talking about asking throughout the process, you're closing on different things. Closing means you were getting a definitive answer. We prefer yes, right? That's closing.
Sure.
We're asking closing questions. And when you're asking questions like, do you agree that this needs to be done? And they say yes, you have closed the solution.
Right.
Don't reopen it.
Right.
Now move on to the next problem to solve. Okay. So the practicalities, like you're talking about how long is it going to take to get another bid out here and this, that, and the other. And you're breaking it down to the ridiculous. And then you're just talking about differential.
Mm-hmm.
I've even had it where first, let's get through the LEA on this. We're going to listen to understand. Okay. They're telling you multiple bids or a second opinion. Your instinctive reaction is to get defensive.
Yeah.
I don't mean aggressively defensive, but defensive. You won't empathize. You'll apologize. Then you'll ask a question that's more self-serving than serving.
Right. That's good.
And it's going to go like this. You know what? I think I just really need to get a second opinion. Oh, well, I'm sorry. Is there something that you didn't understand, or I didn't cover, or I didn't explain well? Because in your mind, you're going, there's no reason they wouldn't do this. And I explained everything like I was taught, and they're reasonably intelligent people.
Mm-hmm.
So something must be wrong here, and you get defensive about it. Well, don't do that, because it's probably not about you. If you did everything you were supposed to do, I mean, I guess it could be still about you, but inherently it's probably more about them trusting you than it is about anything you did or didn't do. Now, if you didn't do the built-in stuff in your process, then yeah, you didn't do something right.
Yeah.
But chances are it wasn't because you didn't explain it well. It could be, but probably not. Mm-hmm. So don't get defensive about it. Don't fall on your own sword. That shows you just spent all this time building your credibility, and all of a sudden you're going to fall on your own sword and say, I didn't do something right. Or then you ask them if they're idiots.
Right.
Sorry, James, I'm sorry. Is there something you didn't understand or something I didn't explain well?
Right.
So are you dumb or am I dumb? Which one of us is dumb? Tell me.
Right.
So let's stay away from that.
And another thing, this goes without saying, I think we've just assumed it. You're not bringing forth an invoice of these are the 4 things that you have to do. You have to present this in options. Believe it or not, multiple options might be the multiple options that you afford them.
Mm-hmm.
Second opinions might be the fact that we're talking about a capacitor and a contactor and a motor. So if you're just going out there and you're not presenting multiple options, you're putting yourself on the hook for one solution, as opposed to what they want is an opportunity to look at information, digest it, and make a decision.
Yes.
So if you're not giving them options to make a decision on, then you are by default are creating space for them to look at options elsewhere.
And that doesn't mean you throw out 4 options and see which one sticks all at the same time. You still start with your recommendation and sell down. But at least there is something else to compare it to.
Right. That's what they're looking for typically is comparatives.
Right.
And we want to give them comparative. Even I'm going to say this. This is a step further, probably more for, quote, sales guys in multiple bid scenarios. I know a number of guys that I work with actually get the not the invoices, but the estimates from other companies.
Oh, yeah.
They have them in a book, and they're like, well, I'd like to see 4 estimates from other companies. Well, cool. I got Johnson Brothers here, Baker Brothers here, Bukowski's over here. You tell me which one, right?
Yeah, and then you're going to start picking them apart, but you're not going to poo-poo those other objections.
No, you're just like, I've got them.
That's a whole nother podcast. We could
Right.
go into how to compare actual estimates
Sure.
in front of a customer. But when we're talking about 3 bids, we're going to listen, empathize, ask questions. I understand. There's a lot of information.
You
here.
want to make sure you make the right decision.
And you want to make sure that you're getting the best value for your money. That's usually what people need
Easy
to see
statement.
multiple, when they need to see other bids and they're getting other bids. But here's what I found. I've been doing this a long time. Here's what I found. There's really 3 things everybody wants. They want good value, the right company, and the right installation. Okay? Or they want a good price, or a great price, a great company, and a great installation. And, there's lots of options in our area for companies to do this work for you. And what I found is, unless you go with the right company, you typically don't get all 3. You typically get 2 of the 3. You get a great price, but you find that they cut corners to give you that great price, so you don't get a great installation. And maybe they're a great company, et cetera. So of the 3 things, a great price, a great company, or great installation, what do you feel are the 2 most important to you?
Let me change that even to say maybe cheap price, because great price, we feel our price is a great price. But to them, I guess what you're saying is, in their mind, great equals cheap, right?
Well, you could say great value.
Great. Well, yeah, I'm with you.
I wouldn't say
keep going.
cheap.
But ask your question again, because
So what I
think it's a
find
great
is
question.
you get 3 things
Right.
from when you have work like this done. You want 3 things when work like this. You want great value, a great
Yes.
company, and a great product.
Perfect.
Or great installation. Now, what do you feel? Because, I find most companies can only provide 2 of those. If you get a good, reputable company like ours, we can give you all 3. That's what we do every day. But if you had to settle for just 2 of those, what would they be?
It's a good question.
And then they answer. And whichever 2 they pick, okay, well, assuming that that's all included, what does great value look like to you? Or what does a great company look like to you? Or what does a great product or installation look like to you? So because they chose those 2 things, we're just going to leave that. We assume we got that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or I'm going to address it. Well, you said, great value and a great product. That's awesome, because that's what you're getting here from us. But the great company, what is a great company?
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? And so we're going to drill down on that one.
Yeah.
And very quickly, if that's not the one, you'll know. But we're going to talk about that one.
Yeah.
And again, remember, these type of objections are process objections. So you might have to wait for them to go through the process.
Sure.
I can already tell you what I'm hearing through the wall is all these people, these in-home service sales professionals telling me, well, what if you're the first one in? Or what if I never want to be the first one in. You know what? You have no control over that, so why worry about it?
Yeah.
If you're the last one in, I'm going to say, they're not going to say, I'm going to get multiple bids. So this doesn't apply if you're the last one in.
Right.
Right? You're probably going to hear, well, I've already gotten several other bids.
Yeah.
If I hear that, then I'm going down the road of,
I would pull them out. Let's look at them together.
Let's just make sure we're going apples for apples.
Yeah.
And maybe I can help you understand some of the stuff. We go through that. So chances are, if they're saying, I'm going to get multiple bids, you're not the last one in.
Right.
So it doesn't matter. This applies. So let's switch over in our last few minutes here. Let's talk about the second opinion and what that means. For you're a technician, you're in a home, and you diagnose something that is bigger than they thought.
Yeah.
Unmet expectation. It's only going to be maybe $500 and I'll have hot water again. Well, you go in, no, it's probably going to cost you $3,000 because you need a new water heater. And since you had your other one, there's code changes that have to happen. We've got to do this, this, and this. A common one on that is maybe the locality did not require the crash-proof post in front of it, or it used to be this high off the floor. Now it's got to be this high off the floor for gas requirements and all this. There's venting, other things that can change. So it's more than they thought it was going to be. And chances are, if they thought it was going to be $500 to repair the water heater, they also looked at what it would be to replace a water heater.
Right.
So chances are they saw $1,500. Well, it's a $3,000 water heater replacement because they didn't think about code upgrades or anything like that had to happen, or reconfiguration. Right. So now they're $3,000. Well, that's a very natural reaction sometimes to say, well, I need to get a second opinion. So the same thing applies. Okay. Again, don't fall on your sword. Okay. And I would say even a second opinion, I'm pushing on that one, and I'm almost going to handle it like a money objection, but I'm not hung up on the money part.
Right.
And so that's where I'm going to go. I understand, James, this is definitely unexpected. When you thought we were going to fix the water heater, now we got to replace it. So I understand. But let me ask you this: do you believe the water heater needs to be replaced? And be very direct about it.
Mm.
It could be, well, James, I understand. A lot of times, this was unexpected. You expect us to fix it, and now we're going to have to replace it. And I understand your need to compare it, but most of the time, when people want to compare or get a second opinion, it usually has to do with the value that they see. So let me ask you, is it the total price of it, or do you feel like the water heater doesn't need to be replaced, or we need to do something different? Because then I'm separating the money from the thing to see which way we go. And I'll tell you that talk to my spouse is an objection that can be awkward. Money can be awkward just because people think about the money first. The technicians or salespeople tend to be hung up on the money before they even get there. When somebody gives you the talk to my spouse objection, that is the sacred ground. I'm walking behind the curtain. You can't follow me. So that feels a little awkward. But a second opinion feels awkward to you because it feels like they don't trust you.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like they don't believe you.
Right.
And when we feel untrusted and people don't believe us, we can naturally become defensive. So this can be very awkward to do. And you have to be willing to ask some of these direct questions in response to that, right?
Yeah.
And it's not around you didn't explain something well. It's not around did they understand it. Both of those could be the case. But if you're following your process, you've probably done a good job of those things. So you've got to figure out, though, what is it? And so you have to be willing to leap, LEA, and ask those questions. You can't problem solve. But I'll tell you the other thing is for you to roll over on this objection is the worst thing you can do. And rolling over sounds like, well, I'm going to get multiple bids. You just leave that one with me, and then we'll let you know. Okay, well, let me write it up, and I'll give it to you. Or I'll tell you what, I'll email it to you when I get back to the shop. You just rolled over. And if you're an in-home sales professional doing that, I'll give you some stats. In my experience of watching this for 25 years, if you just mail out bids, you're going to sell 20% of them. Anywhere 15 to 20% you're going to get. But when you win that bid, it's because there was a very obvious value difference, and a lot of times it's price. Okay? The decision will be made on price usually when you're not present.
Right.
Unless there was one thing that stood out in your bid that no one else did. That's the outlier. So 15 to 20%, you're going to win it based on price. When you get the second opinion objection, or when you roll over like that, then that's your consequences.
Yeah.
It's you're betting. It's a gamble. As a technician, if the customer says, well, I want to get a second opinion, and you fall on your sword, and it's like, well, is there something I didn't do or I didn't explain well or something you didn't understand? Something I can explain again? And they go, no, we just want to get, other options. Okay, if you just go, oh, okay, well, let me know. You just rolled over on it.
Right.
That's not what did I say before?
Professional. You said 3 or 4 words.
What did I say? Professional, authority, whatever.
Authoritative, yeah, you got it.
Whatever it was.
Authoritative, consultative, professional, expert.
There you go. I think that's what it was. We'd play the tape back if we lived in 1970. So, yeah, you're that. So you cannot give up. I would rather you, when they say, I need multiple bids, you go, well, is there something I did wrong or something you didn't understand? I'd rather you do that than nothing at all.
Right.
But that's not the way to handle it. The way to handle it is listen, empathize, ask a question. And the question is, depending on which one of these objections you get, is to understand more about their decision process, right? But to point out something you made, At any time in a process, we should have done the work in the beginning that we can tie back to at this point.
Right.
So you asking the questions you ask during the time, and when were you hoping to get? What were you hoping we could get this done by, or whatever? Establishing timeline, establishing process. You can tie back to that here. Especially, you had said it earlier on a podcast where people will trade control for convenience.
Mm-hmm.
So they might trade control of that extra $1,000 for the convenience of having it done tomorrow,
for sure,
rather than waiting 3 days.
Right.
So again, this is one of those objections. It's a process objection. It's easy to give up on because you feel like, well, that's just their process. Well, no, push back.
Yeah.
Listen, empathize, ask a good question. Ask about, you can give them the 3 things, 2 of the 3 things. Yeah. You can ask them what would be the determining
when you're looking
factor.
at other than price, when you're looking at these solutions, what's going to be most important to you about the company and solution you decide to move forward with?
That's right. That's right. So just don't give up on this one. That's the thing we'll leave you with on this one. Follow your process, minimize, eliminate objections before they happen, leap if you get them, never problem solve early or first, always listen first, then empathize so they know you heard them. Then ask a question that helps you start breaking down the reasons to get to the true condition, because you can only problem solve for a condition. So remember that.
One quick statement. 18% is what I've heard is the national rate of when you walk. So at 15 to 20, that's my same experience as well. Of those scenarios, probably 65 to 70% of the time, the customer ends up moving forward within the next 6 months concerning that solution you discussed with them about, just not with you.
Yeah.
So what you've done is you've set the ball on the tee for somebody else.
You were an unpaid consultant.
You're an unpaid consultant that gave them context about how to buy from somebody cheaper.
That's right.
And so
That's
it's
good.
not when you hear people like, well, you're just kicking tires. No, it's a lie you're telling yourself. They're going to move forward 70% of the time, just not with you.
That's right. That's good. That's good. Well, this objection and the others can be handled in the Ultimate Objection Handling Playbook. You can get on our website, www.serveextra.com. We have classes coming up. I've now said this, I don't know how many times, but I still have to look at the dates. Our sales workshop is coming up May 5th through the 7th. Our tech workshop, May 8th through the 10th, here in Buda, Texas. You can go to our website, get all the details. Beautiful Buda, Texas. Not Buddha, Buda. We also have a leadership workshop coming up the following week. Stay tuned for that. That's open to owners and managers and taught by our one and only Harold James Walker Jr. If you'd like to talk to Harold James Walker Jr.,
254-230-5266. James at Serve Extra.
And if you want to talk to me, 254-733-7109. Elmore at serveextra.com. James, what do we do here at Service Excellence? I'm going to try.
You will not laugh. At Service Excellence, we turn learning into earning.
I'm thinking of the spit take.
The spit take was
Alex,
good.
please leave that in. Bye, everybody.
Take care.